Okay, what we have here is a Ford 289 out of a 68 Mustang. And this thing has been through the ringer. But from everything that I can see on it so far, I don't think it's ever been rebuilt. It was probably somewhat well taken care of, because there's not a lot of ridge at the top of the cylinder. But the biggest problem it has is that it has sat for an unknown amount of years and it was stuck. Now, after 3 or 4 weeks of me trying diesel, Marvel Mystery Oil, transmission oil, I was able to get it to turn maybe a quarter of a turn. And as of right now, this is where my insanity took over. I have pulled it all the way out of the car because I don't think there was going to be a way for me to get it unstuck without pulling it. And I'm in the process of trying to get the pistons out of the cylinders, so I can figure out which ones are the ones hanging it up the worst. Now what I'm going to try to do is a rebuild on this thing as low budget as possible. Like, I have zero budget, but I'm going to try to fix it. But not like completely fix it, just bearings. Maybe a couple of pistons, because I do have some that are damaged due to me, unfortunately, trying to get them out of the cylinder. And some bearings, probably a new timing chain. And I already went through all the lifters, pulled them all apart, and cleaned them all up. And surprisingly, they still look good. The camshaft so far looks still pretty good. And we're going to eventually see if we can get this thing to run. I guess you could call it a super zero budget build. But yeah, the cylinders have got some horrible rust in them. And that's probably what was hanging it up the worst, but I think if I can hone them out, maybe we can make this thing live again. And so far, out of 3 pistons that I've taken out, so far, this is the only one that the ring actually came out on. Those are all completely stuck. And these were too, and I took them all out in pieces. They weren't broke until I broke them trying to get them out, but I could not get them freed up at all. And if I hadn't had messed this thing up, I would have totally have reused this piston for this budget build. Zero budget build. But even the bearings have Ford on them still, which is rather amazing. No idea if this thing's going to focus or not. You can see barely right there. There's an OE Ford part number. And that little square right below it says FOMOCO, which is another very cool thing that tells me this thing may have never been into. Last time this vehicle had any title work done to it was 1987, and I couldn't tell you for sure when it went off the road and was no longer driven, but I know it's the original block because those numbers right there are the last 6 of the VIN number on the vehicle. 126566. Which is interesting because people had always told me that Ford never serialized blocks. But that contradicts what people have told me. And I will have to try to see some other people that have some of these older vehicles. This is the boss on the back side of the block where the transmission mates. And I'm curious to see if anybody knows if they have the original engine, if they have this last 6 of their VIN stamped in there like this one is. I have no reason to believe it's not the original block, and for whatever reason they stopped driving it and it ended up getting stuck and not running anymore. The wear is minimal on the cylinders. I mean, they're probably tapered or egg-shaped. You know, you take it to a machine shop, that's exactly what they're going to tell you. It needs to be bored over, but my dad used to love to rebuild engines by just re-ringing them, cleaning them up, maybe putting a set of pistons in them. 100,000s, 200,000s undersized bearings, just to try to tighten it up a little bit. And we'll see if we can do that same thing. And I got one journal there, it's got a little bit of a scratch in it right there, but it's not horrible. Let's see if I can clean that up and see if we can get the rest of these pistons out of this thing. And I'll try to keep you guys updated on what happens with it. Thanks. Alright, we got an update. I have now got cylinders 1, 2, 3, and 4 all out of the block. And now I can rotate this thing more than a quarter of a turn after I took out number 4. And I don't know exactly why it works better now. I mean, yeah, it's definitely got some gunk on it, and the cylinder really doesn't look that bad. But it appears that it may be the one that was hanging up this thing from turning over the whole way. I mean, yeah, it's definitely dirty, but I don't see nearly the corrosion I have seen in several of the other cylinders. But now I'm curious if it'll turn the whole way. Oh man, look at that. That is the first full revolution I've gotten out of this thing since I started messing with it. That is amazing. So, here's a quick update. Now I can get them all rolled over. I should be able to get them out and maybe start cleaning up these cylinders and seeing if we have any other problems. Maybe she'll breathe fire again, folks. We shall see. Alright, next update. ACs. Ooh, that's a lot. A lot of flex. Even if I would have got this thing unstuck in the car and possibly running, it probably wouldn't have held timing very well, and it probably would have ran like crap. But this is also another indication that this thing has probably never been into. It's not factual, but a good indicator. This is Ford's bright idea of a nylon toothed gear. It's got a metal substrate, but it had a nylon tooth. is no longer visible, and you can see pieces of it have cracked and broke off. Thus, I think the reason for most of this slack in this thing. And there's a good possibility while I was trying to break it free, maybe those eventually came off, but I would say due with that corrosion, that's been off for a while. And yeah, it's got a heavy layer. A little backstory, I did forget to mention, this thing did have oil in it, but unfortunately accompanied with about a gallon, possibly 2 gallons of water. It had slowly gotten into this thing over the years. Now, there's a possibility we could still be looking at a crack in a cylinder. It may have froze, because both front plugs are gone. The rest of them are still there, both sides, same thing. Front one's missing, which means it either did its job and it froze and it popped out, everything else is okay, or maybe somebody knocked them out so that it wouldn't freeze. It's hard to tell. But yeah, that 3 marking on there is kind of interesting. I've been into a 66 Mustang 289, but I was pretty sure that thing had been rebuilt several times, because there was definitely no original parts left inside. But right there is the Ford Oval. I don't know if you can see it or not. Sorry if you can't. I'll try to get a better picture of it at some point. And yeah, it's just as dirty. Oh, excuse me. I'm trying to do this one-handed. Yeah. Sludge, corrosion, moisture. But I mean, it's not eaten out in the water jackets, which is amazing. Because, man, mine had so much corrosion in the water jackets. Now, the fuel pump may have been replaced. I'm not sure on that one. I gotta clean it up and see if I can find any Ford markings on it. But definitely still an original timing chain. All the bearings have Fomoco stamped on them, original Ford. Even down to the pistons themselves, saying Fomoco right down in there. I don't know if it's coming through clearly. And then on the opposite side, a little harder to see, but there is a part number right on that boss right there. So it's definitely quite an original. Probably not a lot of these out there anymore that haven't been through at least once in their lifetime. The car itself, it's rough. It'd be cool if it could be saved. I don't know that I'm the person to do it. I like to try. But I kind of have this thing called automotive ADD. It's something a lot of people need to understand. It's real. I jump from project to project like you wouldn't believe. And for that reason, I have lots of projects that haven't been finished yet. But maybe someday. Oof. Oh man, that's dirty. I thought I got most of that blown out of there. Well, there's our small update for the evening. Have a good one. Well, here we are. We have got all the pistons out, crank out. I finally got the camshaft out. Now I do have some concerns. There is, you see that right there? There was things that were holding my camshaft in, and that almost looks like the bearing started to separate. I can't say I've seen a camshaft bearing do that before, but I have a little piece right there was folded out and keeping the camshaft from pulling out. You see that little thing that looks like a hair? That's part of the bearing. And that's only in two places for sure. That one and there. And that one back there. So unfortunately it's definitely going to need cam bearings. Now, the camshaft journal really doesn't look bad, besides a little bit of rust there where moisture was probably setting on it. And there's definitely places it's got some surface rust. Whether or not the cam is salvageable, I'm not sure. It's a very excellent question at this point. But I still say this is probably a really original car. It's probably a Ford camshaft. I just need to try to see if I can eventually find the mark on it. I'm going to say maybe right about here, probably on the bottom side. Might have the Ford oval. We'll clean it up and let you know for sure. But definitely got the original rope packing rear main seal. And this is one thing nobody has ever showed me or told me my whole life, is that those things are offset, not flush mount. Now, most of the rubber ones may not make a difference, but you know, it's just kind of cool to see an old engine like this that's probably never been into since it was put together at the factory in 67, 68. This was a late build 67, serialized as a 68. I think it was built in December 14th of 67. And of course you can't see the whole casting number on there. But it's got a little bit of a groove from where that rust was on that front one, which was probably from me trying to turn it over. It's pretty rough. I have no idea if you can clean that stuff up or not. So my budget build, my zero budget build, yeah, that's pretty cool. Oh, I forgot to show you. I pulled these two little pieces off of that bearing, that cam bearing. Like I said, the main part of the bearing's still there, just this little layer was coming off. I am not exactly sure if I've ever seen that. I'm not saying it's not possible, but interesting. And crankshaft bearings, they got wear in the usual places for this old of a car, but I mean really nothing out of the super ordinary. Of course I just kind of set everything down in the tray for now. I gotta start cleaning it all up and figuring out what I can do. Now, the good thing is, if the camshaft is not usable, if there's not a way to clean it up or polish it or take those spots out of it, and pending these two bearing journals that are messed up, coming apart, haven't changed the diameter of the camshaft, then maybe I can reuse it. I guess I could measure the lobes and make sure that they're all about the same. It would tell me if the leak's got even lobe wear. Worst case scenario, way back in the day, I had a friend that wanted to build a 302, and he never did. So I've got a camshaft and a set of lifters. Should I have any issues with the original camshaft, meaning it's not usable. So, trying to scrounge around for parts that I don't really have but kind of need. If the bearings were in better condition, I would attempt to reuse the bearings, even though that's a big no-no. But, you know, my dad grew up in the 60s and 70s, and he did this all the time. He said they would come in and they would tighten things up a little bit. They would reuse bearings if they looked good, maybe replace one or two if they looked bad. And then sometimes, you know, maybe they'd splurge and buy 100,000s or 200,000s undersized bearings to kind of tighten things up a little bit. And he never had any problems. Me, I've always done it the right way and sent it off to the machine shop and paid money to get it all done the way it was supposed to be done, and you know, I've never had problems doing it that way. And this might be the first time I try it the way my dad used to way back when, and it comes back and bites me in the butt. Maybe the thing will run great and then crater. And we still got some unknowns on the cylinders. They look good. I don't see any cracks. I'm really hoping they don't have any cracks, and hopefully we'll just hit them with the hone, deglaze them, hopefully take some of that roughness off the walls, especially on that one. See if we can clean it up a little more. See if we can just replace the two pistons that are bad. Totally my fault. Wasn't paying attention, didn't have the right tools. Broke part of the piston skirt off that one. And this one was just hung up, and I wasn't paying attention that it was catching on the cylinder edge on the bottom. And unfortunately I broke some aluminum off there. And if I just wanted to run it to destroy it and blow it up, I would throw it back in and call it good. But I really don't want to blow it up. I want to see if it will breathe fire again and live. And maybe we'll get there. I don't know how long this will take. Could take months, could take years, who knows. But we'll see where this journey takes us. Thanks for watching.